jump right in, Natanya, because we have so much to talk about this idea of metamorphosis and change. So, metamorphosis is defined as a change of the form or nature of a thing or person into a completely different one by natural or supernatural means. I love that. Now, your journey has been an incredible one, and we're going to talk about all kinds of changes that have come into your life. Do you want to start with some of the experiences that you've had and how they've led you to where you are today?
Sure. And to frame it, maybe I'll say there's a Harvard psychologist, Dr. Daniel Gilbert, and he talks about this bias that honestly most of us have, certainly in adulthood, that, we tend to think that the person we are today is the person we will always be from here forward, right? So if you're asked if you're the same person that you were 10 years ago, especially anyone over 36, which is when your brain starts to really solidify in its patterns, right? Most people will say no, but we have a really hard time seeing or imagining our potential for change, transformation, metamorphosis, however you want to call it, in the future, right? So listen, despite that past self that is clearly different than our present self, we think of who we are right now as, real and finished versions. And I was definitely one of those people. So I had a journey that went through several different kinds of disciplines over the years, from the clinical side and therapeutic practice, from the pharmaceutical side, working in-house at pharmaceutical companies, and then as a partner, which I still do, although I've shifted my work to smaller emerging technology-based startup companies. And that was a big risk. And that was a change for me because I'm a cautious person and a planning person. And, I went from secure contracts that went from January to December to 3-month contracts on a maybe if they get funded type of situation. Right. I also, so I left a lot of financial security, and I left a lot of intellectual foothold in terms of feeling like I knew a lot. I mean, I also came to love, and always have come to love, learning new things and from new people. So that's another thing that really was afforded in some of the big parts of the change. And then also putting into practice some of the things that, well, quite frankly, I'm not super proud to admit, but in the spirit of authenticity and transparency, I wasn't necessarily adhering to much of the advice that I had been giving for years in terms of behavior change and, the ability to really pivot in your decisions, your thoughts, your actions, which ultimately, builds to become your personality.
Now, so thank you for sharing that, because as someone who teaches about behavior change, to admit that you weren't necessarily practicing that same talk for yourself, how does that feel to share that out loud? That, that's quite a lot to share.
If I'm being honest, as we mentioned right before record, I typically feel pretty comfortable these days doing podcasts, but I was feeling a little bit hot in the neck because I said to you that I'm going to talk about some personal things that I've never talked about before in a public way, but I thought it made it more real and maybe make a deeper connection for someone who on the surface might think, oh, you have everything, or you look a certain way, that must mean you're this kind of health, or you can eat these kinds of things, or things have been easy for you. And I'm not here to complain. I'm just here to deconstruct some of that myth of what we see on the outside of folks, and also what can be the you that you are today versus the you that you are tomorrow.